last go around here with the Cap Sim. Can you guys see that? Take a look at that.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, I only have one question. What happened? Oh my gosh, I am just like, I opened this up here a couple days ago. And I thought, what the heck happened here? Andrews is down 12%. Chester down 11, Digby down 38%. Emergency loans, 16 million, 1.9, which for Chester, that's not bad. But then 48 million for Digby. So Baldwin made money. Baldwin continued to move forward. Return on sales 1.0, return on asset 1.1, 2.4 for return on equity. So they made this time 2.5 million. What happened, guys? Anybody give me any thoughts on what was going on? Was there some sort of particular industry condition?
Well, we just tried some new stuff because with Andrews, because we were well, we did invest in a new product for next round, and we just we felt like we were slowly just not doing anything, so we thought we would try putting more into advertising, and we did a little switch up with our prices, but yeah, I don't know, we were just trying something different, I guess.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I see you introduced a new product, Angel, here. And Baldwin did another new product too. They got Bonus. So they've got Beast that came out a low end, Bull that came out traditional, and Bonus. It looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, Baldwin, you're following a low cost strategy here. Obviously don't want to give anything away, but that's, I mean, just by looking at this, you can see that's the focus right here. Looks like Digby came out with two products, Dippy and Disco. All right. Okay. So yeah, maybe it's just because of the fact that you guys are spending some money introducing new products. I mean, inventory isn't, with the example of Digby, you've got, or with the exception of Digby, you got one product here, your traditional, where you had 1,214 units that was in inventory, but Andrews 608, 854. So there was some inventory, but it wasn't so much the inventory. It must have been your expenses that you guys had this last time, your strategic investments. So let's just kind of see what happens, what it does next week. A little bit concerned about the products with, where was it? Which one was it? Chester, your traditional product, your age on that was 6.1, and the traditional consumer buying characteristics for that product is a 2.0. So you're quite a ways off on your age. And then 5.5 for performance and 14.5 for size. So performance is 7.1, you're at 5.5, and size is at 12.9, you're at 14. So I think what we might need to do, guys, again, take a look at your different what the different buying characteristics are, the criteria for your customers, and try and closely align your products to what their expectations are. But other than that, it looks like there was some large investment, and I know you guys had a huge bond to pay off, didn't it? Wasn't it 23 million this last time? It was a big one to pay off.
For which company?
I think all of you guys had a bond that was due, wasn't it, this last time?
Yeah, Andrews did for sure.
Well, I mean, if Andrews did it, you all had a bond that had to be paid off. So, and that came out of your money right off the top. So, yeah, that was,
ours was 32.
I knew it was a big one. It was a large bond that had to come out. All right, well, you know what? Let's go over to the lecture. I want to get the lecture done tonight, and maybe if we can get out just a little early. I want to cover everything that we need to cover in this chapter having to do with an internal analysis of the firm. And then we will have covered the external analysis, the internal analysis. You guys get a week off next week, and then we come back and we start looking at business unit level strategy and corporate level strategies. And then it kind of comes all together for you guys. So anybody have any questions so far where we're at? Are you good, Angela? All right, excellent. Okay. Let's go to this. All right, we are going to be looking at the internal analysis of the firm. Can you guys see my slide? See if I can get this up here. And I am recording, so you guys have noticed that the recordings are posted like a YouTube now, right? So that they should be a little bit easier for you to view them. All right, there we go. So we're going to be looking at the internal environment of the firm. Really an important area of analysis. Equally important, as we learned from last week, was that external environment of the firm. We were looking at, there were 6 different general categories in which we were examining those factors within those categories and whether or not those factors would have an effect on the industry in which we are competing, and of course our firm as well. And the acronym for those different 6 categories was PESTLE. So anybody give me an idea what those acronym letters stood for? What were those different 6 categories that we were looking at analyzing? Anybody got that? Let's see what we got here.
Repeat that, Professor. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah. So last week, we were looking at the external environment of the firm, and there were 6 different macro environmental categories that we analyzed to see whether or not those factors would have an effect on the industry in which we are competing and our firm as well. And the acronym of these 6 general categories, when spelled out, is PESTLE, P-E-S-T-E-L. They stand for each one of those 6 categories. Can anyone tell me what those 6 categories that we analyzed are?
Political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental factors?
Exactly, those are. And of course, when we look at each one of those factors, we're looking to see whether or not within those categories, all those factors that we would consider, will they have some sort of an effect on our firm? And we gave some examples when we're looking at legal. We talked about California having the new law coming into place, looking at electric vehicles. So that would be one example then that could have an effect, both positive and negative, on industries. All right, moving forward here. So now we're going to be looking at the firm. Does somebody have their mic on? Because I'm getting some background noise. It sounds like some kids are involved with us here. No, we good? Yeah, excellent. All right, here's what we're looking at. From our first lesson, there were general schools of thought that kind of go into this course. One was the design school, one was the planning school, then we had one that was a learning school, then we had one called the resource-based view, and that's what we're looking at now. We're looking internally to see if we can identify what those resources are that firm has available that it can use, and when capitalized on, create some sort of competitive advantage or take advantage of an opportunity. Additionally to that, what we're looking at is identifying what it is internally that we do well, those competencies that we have. We're looking at identifying competencies, and we're looking at core competencies. Then we're looking at distinct competencies, something that we do uniquely well, and whether or not those 3, or that stages of those 3, competence, core competence, and distinct competence, might be able to lead us to a competitive advantage. We're also going to be looking at something called a VRIO framework. It's really just a short back of the envelope, quick assessment to determine whether or not those resources and capabilities that we've identified, whether or not they might be able to create a competitive advantage. And there's a little framework that goes along with that. And of course, VRIO is going to be another acronym that stands for, well, I'll show you here in a second. Tonight, we're also going to be looking at the balanced scorecard. And with the balanced scorecard, there are 4 perspectives that will be considered to see whether or not a firm is well balanced to be competitive currently and also in the future. So there's 4 little assessment areas that we look at under the balanced scorecard. We'll look at the importance of the financial ratios when we're doing a strategic analysis, looking at how the firm has performed and how it is performing, and then whether or not those areas that we've identified within the financial analysis, what do we need to do to make sure that we can improve some of those areas. We're going to be looking at primary and support activities from the value chain. That's the linked set of value creating activities going from the raw material all the way to that customer. There are certain activities that occur along that linked set of activities. And where we are located on that string of events there, that's our center of gravity. That's where we have the most control. But with that value chain analysis, what we're trying to do then is trying to find out, are there areas within this that we're doing especially well, where we might be able to get a competitive advantage? And are there areas along this linked set where we're not doing so well that we need to improve so that we are not at a competitive disadvantage? We're going to be looking at the basic functions of that firm. These would be those functional areas: management, marketing, finance, accounting, production, operations, R&D, information systems. Because we're doing an internal analysis of the firm, we want to make sure that each one of these functional areas can support whatever that chosen strategy is that we are determined to pursue. And then we do a couple of analyses here. You remember we did the EFE, the external factors evaluation, and I mentioned at that time that there would be another one that you would do similar to that. And the results of this one, the IFE, with the results of the EFE, with those 2 numbers, we're going to plot them on another matrix called the IE and get our first recommended strategy. And then finally, we do another matrix. It's called the SFAS, Strategic Factors Analysis Summary. Decision makers like to see summaries of report. And so what we're looking at here are the most important factors that we've identified from the EFE and from the IFE, and we put that into this matrix called the SFAS. All right. So here's what we're going to be looking at. When we examine that internal elements of the firm, we're going to be looking at the organizational culture. Whether or not that organizational culture is going to be change supportive or change resistant. Well, that is important because we want to make sure that if we're going to be formulating and implementing a strategy, those within that firm are going to be supportive of that strategy. An organizational culture can kill a good strategy if they're not going to be supportive of it. We're going to be looking at management, both from the senior level and functional levels. Do they have the management skills in order to lead that company and their particular area, those functional areas, in making the right types of decisions that would be necessary to support the strategy? We look at operations, we look at marketing, we look at production, the capacity of that and the efficiency of that. We examine HR, finance, R&D, and then we look at internal guidance. That's the command and control. In other words, that's mainly your organizational structure. How is that aligned? We're going to be looking later on in chapters about the importance of an organizational structure. The organizational structure provides 3 very, very critical elements to a firm's success: control, coordination, and communication. So do they exist? What kind of internal guidance does this firm have? And then, of course, we look at the vision and the mission statement to see whether or not they are aligned or the strategy is aligned to the vision and mission statement. So the resource-based view, it is a strategic approach, and it focuses on identifying the firm's resources, their capabilities, their competencies. And here's the key word: when exploited, may enable that firm to achieve a competitive advantage. What we want to do is have that firm lead to a long-term sustainable performance. Now, resources can be both tangible and intangible assets. Tangible and intangible assets would include human resources, financial, physical assets, information, technology, and infrastructure. Capabilities. This is what the firm is capable of doing. This is the skills that that firm has learned how to do in the transference of inputs to outputs. This is our capabilities. This is what we have learned to do over the years and how well we are doing it, and how that particular skill that we have identified and developed, how that translates to being efficient and effective in that input of raw materials and workers and money and whatever those other inputs are into the outputs of that product or service that that firm is providing. Now, capabilities are assessed in the people we have, what kind of skills they have, what kind of knowledge they have. Also, the physical resources, the financial resources, the operating systems, the control and access to information systems, whether or not that firm can create intellectual property and how that intellectual property can be used for a competitive advantage. The relationship that we have with suppliers is also part of our capabilities. Having a good supplier relationship is a critical element. In fact, that could give you somewhat of a competitive advantage. So let's take a look at resources, both tangible and intangible, and organizational capabilities. Maybe a couple others would be thrown in here as well. All right, under financial. So tangible resources, financial, we'd have the firm's cash and cash equivalent, the firm's ability to raise equity, and the firm's ability to borrow. What kind of capacity does it have there? Those would be tangible resources. And of course, that's important. We know that you need cash or the availability of equity and borrowing capacity so that you can support whatever your strategy is going to be. It has to be supported that way. Under physical, we're looking at how modern are the plants and facilities. Do we have favorable manufacturing location? And what about our machinery and our equipment? Are they state of the art? Those again can give you a competitive advantage. Technology, do we have any trade secrets? Do we have any unique or innovative production processes? Do we have patents, copyrights, and trademarks that we can leverage? And then organizationally, does our firm follow formalized strategic planning? And that is important, because we know that firms that follow formalized strategic planning perform better. So do they have that? And do they have a way to evaluate and control then that strategic plan once it's been implemented? Can they look and see how well it's doing? And then can they control that? Under intangible resources, now we're looking at the human element of our firm. The experience of those employees, and are they capable? And let me ask you this question here. How important is it for an employee to trust management and for management to trust employees? Is it? Is it necessary at all?
It's definitely important.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, because if you don't have that trust, how are you able to be to have the performance? You know, I give you a task and I rely on you to do it. And then when I do it, hopefully when I turn it back into you, it's something of value that was requested of me. So it's very important.
Most certainly. I agree with you, Rosa. So if you are working for a firm and the leadership of that firm has been known not to be truthful with those employees, and then leadership of that firm comes out with some sort of statement, how willing are you to believe what they say if they've been known to be untruthful in the past? You're going to be less willing, right? And it goes both ways. If management isn't receiving correct information or erroneous information or untruthful information from the employees, whenever their reports have been created and delivered and analyzed, leadership is going to question whether those reports are valid or true. Trust is essential in the performance of an organization, and it has to go both ways. You have to be able to trust leadership, and leadership has to be able to trust those employees. Managerial skills. Well, we look at managers, and are they skilled? Do they know what they're doing? I mean, it's that simple. Do they know what it is that they're supposed to be doing in that particular job? If you are in marketing and you're the leader of that marketing division, do you understand the marketing principles that are necessary for you to make those kinds of decisions for that firm when they're trying to make a growth strategy? Do you know how to go out and do an analysis of the competitors, of the market, of your product relative to whether the needs are going to be met by those consumers? Do you know how to do the psychographics and demographics of marketing and what those reports will reveal to you? That's critical. What about finance? Person in charge of finance, do they understand the different ratios and what the different ratios mean and the importance of those ratios? And again, with operations, do we have someone that's in charge of operations that understands how to improve efficiency and effectiveness and improve the quality and the output? So it's really, really critical that the managers in each one of the functional areas, especially, know the most that they can about what it is that they're supposed to be doing. You want to get the most capable people in that position that they're best fitted for. Then we look at any kind of firm specific practices and procedures that they have learned over a given period of time. Organizational cultures pick up best ways of doing things specific to their organization. Are there anything that is unique that firm might be able to exploit and create a competitive advantage? Under innovation, we look at any kind of technical and scientific skills and any kind of innovation capacities. And of course, we know about brand name and brand image. We can, when exploited, get a competitive advantage from our reputation and our brand name. What about quality and reliability? Those are important because they're important to that customer. And of course, the reputation we have with our suppliers for being fair. Under capabilities, now again, capabilities is the transference of those goods from the raw material to the finished good. Now we're looking at areas of support within the organization, like outstanding customer service, product development capabilities that are superior to others, innovativeness of products and service. And then with HR, their ability to hire and motivate and retain human capital. Well, let me ask you this question. Are employees of a firm, maybe I should rephrase that, can employees of a firm be considered a competitive advantage? Or can we get a competitive advantage because of the employees of our firm?
If you have some like really good employees, I mean, that can definitely be a thing, you know?
Right.
It's like you're the A team going against the C team, basically, you know what I mean?
You're right. You're exactly right. And so you're right that employees of a firm, based on their skills and capabilities. Now, remember, we have to be able to exploit this. So we have to be able to take those skills and the knowledge that we have of those employees and translate that into something that would create a competitive advantage. And I just got a question. I think it was from Chris. Chris, did you have a question?
I know, I was just gonna elaborate. I was gonna say, if an employee has a wealth of resources, that can give the company a competitive advantage against other companies. Is that where, are we talking internally or externally?
We're talking the employees within that firm. Yes. Yes,
Okay.
and they could be individually, and it also could be the group of employees of what they know collectively. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, bottom right side of this slide, it says it is important to note that resources alone do not provide a competitive advantage. What we're saying here simply is that you have to be able to exploit these areas that you've identified. That's the whole thing. You've got to be able to exploit it. All right. So here's that VRIO framework that I was mentioning in our first slide. It's kind of a back of the envelope approach to identifying whether or not a resource can provide for that firm some sort of an advantage. First of all, trying to identify, is this particular resource or this capability that we have, is it valuable? Does it provide customer value and possibly a competitive advantage? That would be like the first step. If it's valuable to that customer, well, we've got a good move forward then as far as maybe providing a competitive advantage. The second one, though, a little bit more importantly, is it rare? Do we have it and our competition doesn't have it? And if that's the case, and it's important in either the service or the product that we provide, now we're moving along. We can get a competitive advantage with that being rare because our competition doesn't have it, especially if it's a critical item that they need in the manufacturer or providing that service. Third thing, is it inimitable? Is it costly for others to imitate it? So not only is it rare, but if there's other things out there that could be used as a substitute, would it be costly for them to do that? And if that's the case, then again, it would lead that firm to having a possible competitive advantage. And then the last thing, of course, is whether or not we are able to exploit this. Is the firm able to be organized enough to identify these resources and capabilities and exploit them to gain that competitive advantage? So that's the VRIO framework. All right. So now when we're going through our organization and we're doing our analysis there, we're looking to see in our analysis, we're trying to find things that our company does well. This is mainly the organizational culture and those processes and activities that they perform. So this would be like the integration and coordination of those capabilities. So a competency is cross-functional. That means it goes between functional areas of that firm. And it is integrated so that it all works together and it's coordinated through that organization. So a good example of a competency would be that pursuit of quality or that pursuit of excellence that the firm has developed over years. That would be a competency that it has: customer service, quality, those types of things. And it is a product of organizational learning and experience. And they become very, very proficient at doing this over that period of time. So we've identified then, okay, these activities that we see here, the firm is very, very good at doing it. They're very competent at doing that. Now we want to go to the next step. Is that particular activity that they're doing, is it something that is a main strength of that firm? Then it's a core competence. This is central to that firm's activity. Again, it's a collection of those competencies and they cross divisional boundaries. So in other words, this is something that is company-wide. It's collaborative again, it's widespread within that organization, and that firm is able to do it exceedingly well. So we've identified competencies. Now, of those competencies, some of those are core. Some of those are the main strength of that firm. The next area that we look at then is distinct competencies. These are those core competencies that are unique, that are distinctive, not easily matched or imitated. And because of the fact that they're not easily matched or imitated, they're oftentimes superior to the competition. Now, examples of distinct competencies would be our development of technology, maybe our position as a leader in the industry when it comes to quality or innovation or service or anything like that, our industry position, relations with marketing, our ability to keep our costs low, the ability to keep our quality high, maybe internally, our business processes that we use that are cost savings and that lead to more efficiency. Maybe it's the manufacturing processes as well. Maybe we have state-of-the-art manufacturing and it can lead to faster production and of higher quality. And the people itself, our people, they could be a distinct competency. So when you're looking at tech firms, well, how about Google? Google and the development of their products out there, do you think that those people who are developing those products have distinct competencies when it comes to the creation and ideation and the development of whatever those technological products are? Most likely. What about customer satisfaction? And then customer service. So you can see that there's a lot of different areas that a firm can create distinct competencies. Now, here's the key. Remember, we need to exploit this stuff. So if we take and we've identified our distinct competencies, now what we want to do is turn them into competitive advantages. So superiority that is gained by those distinct competencies of that firm. And in some areas, what we might be able to do is offer our products or service at a lower price. Or what we might be able to do is offer at a greater value, a little bit higher price, our products and service through differentiation. And those are the two different types of general strategies that a firm will pursue. They're either going to pursue a low-cost strategy or a differentiation strategy. And we're going to be looking at the different strategies here, and they're Porter's strategies. They're called Porter's generic strategies. There's 4 of them, but they're very, very simple. You're either going to be a low-cost provider like Costco or Walmart, or you're going to be a differentiation provider. That means you're going to be providing a product or service that is uniquely different. It is based on that consumer feeling or perceiving that that product is uniquely different. That's the whole basis of differentiation. They have to feel that that particular product or service that they're getting is uniquely different, that when they buy that product or use that service, it gives them some feeling of uniqueness. Now, with both those strategies, the further division of those would be either we're going to go after a market that is a focused market, a smaller buying group, maybe a small geographic area, maybe a product segment area, or we're going to go after a large market group, large geographic area, general large buying group. So it's when you look at the strategies, there's 4 of them: cost, differentiation, focused, and broad. Pretty darn simple. Those are Porter's generic strategies, and we'll be talking more about those as we move forward. Most likely it's going to be in the next lecture. Now, here's where we want to reach. You want to get your company to a point where those competitive advantages that you've identified, and you heard me mention that many of them, we're looking at multiple competitive advantages. The more of those we can identify and use against our competition, the greater difficulty it is for them to retaliate or to combat against or to mitigate against. So we want to get as many of those as we can. But here's where we want to go. We want to get competitive advantages that last for some given period of time. Those are called sustainable competitive advantages. Now, the problem is this, is that how long is sustainability? How long can a company have a competitive advantage over another company before that other company has to do something to mitigate your advantage over them? And this goes back to something that's called the survival mode. Organizations are living, breathing entities, in a sense. They need to exist. They have to. They're just like a living organization in that they want to grow. They have to exist. If they're threatened, they're going to do whatever they can to defend themselves. So when we're looking at one firm having a sustainable competitive advantage over another, in other words, now Jaime has his company has an advantage over Angela's company. And that advantage has to do with quality. So in other words, the customers out there are going to Jaime's company because Jaime's company has higher quality, and Angela's company now is losing sales because those customers perceive that Jaime's company has better quality. All right. Here's what happens under the survival mode. Is that Angela's company now?
Dude, look what I just did, bro. Boom.
I'm sorry.
I deleted so much shit right now, bro.
Nathaniel's still on, so I think he might want to mute himself. Nathaniel.
Oh shit, I'm unmuted. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's all good, bro.
It's okay, bro.
I stopped you before you said something crazy.
It's okay, bro.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Not a problem. Not a problem. All right, where was I? Okay, Angela's losing sales, right, to Jaime's company because of quality. Now, Angela, you don't want to do this because you know that if this lasts for any given period of time, your revenues are going to go down, your profits are going to go down, your stock price goes down, all sorts of nasty things happen. So under the survival mode, this is what a company does. We're going to do whatever we can to make sure that we're not at a competitive disadvantage anymore. That then meaning is that Angela is going to work on improving her quality so that at least she gets parity with with his company, so that there is no more of an advantage that Jaime has over Angela. And that's the problem with sustainable competitive advantage, is that if one firm has a sustainable competitive advantage over another firm, that firm or other firms are going to do whatever they can do to mitigate and at least cause parity with whatever that advantage was. So how long will a competitive advantage last? It lasts as long as the other companies take to create some sort of neutral effect on that advantage. Did that make at all sense to you guys? All right, good. All right. Now, when we're going through the internal analysis, of course, we want to take a look at the financials. We want to take a look at our financials from a month ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, how they performed last year. So we want to get some sort of an idea. What's the trending of that firm in the past and where is it going? That kind of gives us an idea where we might be needing some help, or maybe we're in a fine position. So we use financial ratios to do that. And different financial ratios will tell us different things about the performance of that organization. So here are some of those areas that we would use with financial ratios to determine the performance of that firm. Under liquidity, we'd be looking at current ratios and the quick ratio. And then under leverage ratios, we're looking at debt to total assets, debt to equity, long-term debt to equity ratio, and times interest earned. Activity ratios are very important. We want to know what our inventory turn is, fixed asset inventory turn, or excuse me, fixed asset turnover, total asset turnover, looking at our receivables, accounts receivables, and our average collection period. A couple others that we would be looking at would be profitability ratios, looking at gross profit, operating profit, net profit, return on asset, return on equity, earnings per share and PE ratio, and then growth. What's our sales growth ratio? What's our net income ratio? What's our earnings per share and dividends per share? Now, you notice that under each one of those categories, there's several of them. It's not necessary to do all of them, but only get a good idea from each one of those categories, how well that firm is performing. All right.
Professor,
Sure.
do you have an Excel sheet or an example of what that would look like with the financial statements?
Do I have one? Well, I did have one. I did have one. I'm gonna have to find that and see if I can get that and send it off to you guys, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, and with that, it was really kind of handy because it would tell you from your financial statement where you needed to pull the data and plug it into this. So it was really kind of a pull and plug type of an Excel sheet where you would pull the number from the financial, plug it in, and then it would, the ratio would spit out. It would tell you what the ratio is. So it was kind of cool. I'm going to have to find that. I haven't. Now that was a couple of years ago I had that. So let me do some looking over this next week and see if I can locate that for you, okay? Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. All right, we're moving on. Something called the Balanced Scorecard. This was developed by Kaplan and Norton out of Harvard. The reason that they developed this was prior to the Balanced Scorecard, the only analysis tool that were used by management was financial, looking at the financial statement. Now, that in and of itself is not bad, but it's not giving you a complete picture. We know that financials and financial ratios is an indication of past performance. It's telling you what the firm has already done as indicated by those ratios. So in other words, that activity has already been completed. So it's a lagging indicator. Kaplan and Norton knew that in order for a firm to be well balanced, they need to have a perspective on where that firm is going in the future, because that determines whether or not there's going to be future sales. And then combine those two, where we are right now from a financial position and where we are going as indicated by these other types of analysis. And that'll give that firm a more holistic view of whether or not it has a balanced approach to its position within that industry. So that's the short-term and long-term objectives of that. So the areas that we're going to be assessing then with the Balanced Scorecard, we're going to be looking at our company through the lens of that customer. How do they view us? And then we look at learning and growth and internal business processes. And of course, we have financial in there as well. So let's start off with customer perspective. And again, this is through the lens of that customer. This is oftentimes very difficult for those decision makers to do, is to step outside of their company and view their company like a customer would. How do they view it? How does our firm look when it comes to customer service? How does our firm look when it comes to quality and the time that is given to that consumer, or the time in our reaction to questions from that consumer? What is our cost when it comes to the goods or services that we're providing? Does that consumer feel that what they are getting from us is a fair value for what they're paying? And that's important, because if the consumer doesn't feel that we're providing good quality, good service, good customer service, good value to them, will they be buying from us in the future? Probability is not, they're not going to. So there's your future right there. That's part of it. Second thing, internally, this is the learning and growth. What are we doing with the knowledge that we are creating from not only the customer out there, but from the industry and from our competition and from the development of other goods or products out there that might be on the market. We look at our human capital. What kind of information do we have? And are we using all of this information to then position our firm to provide better products and service to those customers and meet their changing needs? There's a second one. Are we growing? Are we learning? Are we taking any of this information and just storing it, or are we really using this information? Next one is internal business processes. What are we doing internally, again, to improve our cycle time, our quality? Are we investing in our employees, giving them greater skills and in productivity? These are areas that can have an impact on those customers and providing them with better products and better services. Us learning how to do our processes better, keeping our costs down, improving the quality of that. So there's three areas that we look at for the future perspective. We look at the customer, we look at the internal business processes, and we also look at learning and growth. And then, of course, we have the financial perspective. Now, this, when it came out, actually made a lot of sense to those decision makers. They go, yeah, that does make sense. We have to look towards the future. And yeah, the financial elements, they've always been critical and they always will be critical. But conceptually seeing it and actually applying it and seeing how it all lays out was a difficult thing to do. So Kaplan and Norton came back and they developed something called a strategy map. And really a strategy map is nothing more than a cause and effect map. That's all it is, cause and effect diagram. So here's how it works. I'll give you an example. This is a strategy map based on Southwest Airlines. Now you can see vertically on the left, we've got some areas here that we're looking at: vision and mission statement, the strategic theme, the market segment that Southwest is operating in, and the slogan. And then there are our balanced scorecard perspectives: financial, customer, and internal process. Now, under internal process, the one thing that Southwest is doing, they're changing the capacity or capacity building under their internal process. In other words, they're trying to improve an internal process. And the thing that they're changing is this: they're going to align their ground crew. So when that plane comes in, their ground crew now is going to be arranged in such a way that they can reduce the turnaround time. So that's the capacity building internal process area that you see on the bottom there. So by doing this, here's the cause and effect. Several things happen. We know that in business, time and costs, there's a direct correlation between that. The more time we spend on something, the more it's going to cost us. The less time, the less cost, right? So if we have then reduced turnaround time under the financial part, one of the effects of that would be lower costs. That goes up to the left there in that red box. Now, for the customer's perspective, how will this affect the customer? Well, if we have reduced turnaround time, we can then offer lower prices. And if we offer lower prices, we can get more customers. And if we have a reduced turnaround time, that means our planes are back out up in the air faster. We can have on-time flights, which is also a benefit to that consumer. So if you look at how to please the customer, you're going to give lower prices and on-time flights, and consumers like that. Now then, with on-time flights and more customers, we're going to have increased revenue. And with increased revenue and lower costs, the firm's going to have higher profitability. So the strategy map is nothing more than just a cause and effect diagram, and it does work. And that's a good example right there with Southwest. All right, we're moving on to another analysis internally, and this is called the value chain analysis. So the value chain is a linked set of value creating activities, starting from raw material, going all the way to that customer. Now, where we are located on that linked set of activities is called the center of gravity. Now, what we do here is we list all of those activities that occur: raw material, logistics, manufacturing, logistics, distribution, whatever those activities are, we list them out. And then what we try and do is determine a couple things. What's the cost of that, and what's the time element involved in each one of those? And we're going to analyze both the primary activities and the activities that support those primary activities. So here's kind of what it looks like. Here's a value chain for you guys. So you can see we have raw materials, that's our starting point. And then we have to move that raw material. So there's our transport, there's our logistics. We manufacture that product, and then we have to move it again to our distributor. We store the products for distribution. We then move it again to the retail store, and then we stock it in the retail store, and then we transport it to that consumer. Now, the reason it's called a value chain is this, because every time that product moves from one step to the next, the value of that product goes up. So we have a value of our raw materials at $100. And when we move it now, we've added another cost to that movement. And at the end of two, that particular raw material now has a higher value. It's the value of the raw material plus the value of the movement. And again, we manufacture, there's another cost, we move it again, another cost. That's why it's called a value chain. All right. So where we are on this value chain is, again, that's our center of gravity. So let's say that we are the manufacturer. We're right down here. All right. That's where we have the most expertise in the activities that are involved on this value chain. When we start looking at business unit level strategies, actually corporate level strategies, we look at strategies called integration strategies, a way to grow the company having to do with the value chain. And we can grow the company by moving backwards in the value chain and transporting our raw material to our manufacturing center, or we can move forward and do the transport. That would be called forward and backward integration. Or we can then move forward even farther and become the distributor of that product. And that would be another integration strategy going forward. And the value to this is that, first of all, we're now controlling more activities in this value chain. We're controlling not only activities, but we're picking up a profit stream in there. And we're getting closer to, in one case, the raw material, knowing how much there is available. And in the other case, we're getting closer to that consumer to see what the needs are of that consumer and getting a better idea of what their demands might be. So there are advantages to integration strategies, either moving backward or forward. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. That's kind of a preview for you there. So the primary activities that we'd be analyzing would be all inbound logistics, all customs, all material handling, all operations, including manufacturing, all outbound logistics, all sales and service. So as an example, let's say that Rosa did a value chain analysis of her company. And what Rosa would be putting down on this big spreadsheet, and actually it's a computer program, would be these things: inbound logistics, customs, material handling, operations, including manufacturing, outbound logistics, sales and service. So she's putting down the cost of each one of those. In addition to that, she's putting down time. How much time does it take for all that inbound logistics to get to where they need to be? How much time does it take then for our products to clear customs? And what are the costs of customs? And material handling, of course, that's the movement of all the stuff that's in our warehouse. The forklifts, the drivers, the propane, the maintenance, all of that, the tires, whatever those types of material handling equipment things may be, would go into that. And Rose is going to list this all on this great big spreadsheet. And she's going to put the time down too. What's the average time that it takes to move material from point A to point B? Now, if she had information about her competition, she could compare what her inbound logistics costs were, what her customs costs were, and time to our competition, and determine whether or not how well she's doing relative to them. Would that give her a competitive advantage? Are our logistics inbound costs lower than the competition? Are the custom costs lower? Is the time to clear customs shorter? So that is another way of analyzing your primary activities to see if there's areas of competitive advantages that we might be able to exploit. Now, going past this, we know that there's support that has to be for each one of these activities. And so we'd be looking then at procurement. This would be a support activity, technology, HR, and general administration. So we have to analyze that as well. So you can see that when we do a value chain analysis, it's rather extensive. All right. Anybody have any questions on a value chain analysis?
I do, Professor. Real quick, since human resource management is part of the value chain support activity, what about these companies who no longer have an HR department? They have an actual program that runs their HR. It's no longer an actual HR department. How does
Right.
that work? How would that work? My brother currently works for a company right now where they don't have an HR department. It's just a program app that they just do, and that's it.
Right. Yeah. Well, the only
How
way
does that work?
yeah, the only way that they could do that. Now, I don't know if they're paying for that app. Is there some sort of monthly fee for the use of that app, or is it an annual fee? Or I don't know what the arrangement is, or is it one set price that they had to purchase that, and then any kind of upgrades they might have to pay for? Not sure how that works. But what you could do then is you could then determine that total cost of that HR activity and divide that over the numbers of movements that you might have through there to get an idea of what each movement cost would be as it relates to HR. So there could be ways that you could, kind of splice it up a little bit. Yeah, good question, Rosa. All right, well, here's how it would look. You'd have your primary activities that are listed on the bottom, and then your support activities listed on top. And then, of course, we always want to throw any kind of profit margin in there to see how well our firm is doing. I got a little chat here. It says, wow, didn't know that there are apps for HR. Yeah, Ken, there are certain apps out there that can do a lot of the activities for HR. Have you guys done any of the training, HR training? And you just go to a website and you have to go through the training on the thing, and you have to spend so many hours on doing the training, and then you're cleared for the next year or 2 years having to do with maybe sexual harassment, or maybe or I don't know, there's other
Every
ones.
year in the military.
Every year, right? And it's an online thing, isn't it?
It is. And same thing with like PII, phishing, the emails, security. There's like hours of it.
Right, yep. Well, that's part of the HR. And of course, instead of having someone conduct a class and have you sit in that class for however long you would have to sit in each one of those segments of that, they offer it with these little training sessions that are online, and you do it, at home or whenever you can do it. Yeah, I have to go through those things. I think we go through 3 different types every 2 years, having to do with privacy of students' rights, having to do with sexual harassment, having to do with something else that I should know, but
They're
yeah.
very redundant, aren't they?
Oh my gosh, yeah, they are. They are. And My
They're
wife,
put there for liability purposes.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, and from that, they can see whether or not you took the training, right? All right.
Yeah, most of your big companies will have all of that training, but some of these smaller companies, they don't have human resource departments anymore because it's too costly for them. So for them, they'd rather pay that monthly fee for, these HR apps. Like most of the time, they're just like clock in, clock out apps that
Yeah.
have the full HR. Like our company, I think we have less than 100 people, but so we don't really have an HR department. So we use a website called Paylocity, so which gives us everything, all of our paperwork and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Right. Well, an HR manager, I think the average pay for an HR manager now is what, 85,000 a year?
up to 100, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're
Yeah.
not cheap. It's not cheap. Right. All right, moving on. Now we're looking internally at the functional areas of the firm. Here's what we're going to be looking at. The first one is organizational culture. And as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the things we're assessing with organizational culture is whether or not it's going to be change supportive, change resistant. And again, organizational culture is an area that can provide that firm with a source of competitive advantage. How they believe, their values, their core values of how they believe in quality and customer service, that can be a tremendous competitive advantage for a firm. We're looking at general management. We're looking at HR and R&D, marketing, information systems, finance, operations, sales, and customer service. All right. Organizational culture. So this is then that culture, pattern of behavior that is developed by an organization over time as it learns to cope with the problems of external adaptation and the internal integration that it's taught to the new members as to the correct way and to perceive, think, and feel. The organizational culture does that. You bring a new employee on, and those who have been with that employee for a long time know how the system works. And they then transfer that information, that training to that new employee. This is how we do things around here. This is the correct way that this company follows whatever that procedure might be. And that's a product of that organizational learning. And we know then that organizational culture can be a source of competitive advantage. Of course, what we're looking at here, one of the areas that we're going to be examining is that organizational culture going to be change supportive or change resistant. Management. Now, all managers should know how to do these 4 basic things. And it would be really sad if you have management that doesn't know how to plan, doesn't know how to organize, does not know how to direct, does not know how to control. These are essential for leaders, managers, to be able to do this. Under planning, ongoing, comprehensive process requiring management to evaluate the company's current position. Where are we right now? Where do we stand? What are those resources, capabilities, competencies that we have available to us now? And where do we want to go in the future? Now, it's not just knowing where you want to go in the future. It's determining what is that future going to look like. If we're going to compete in the future with our company at some period out there, 5 years out, 7 years out, what is that future going to look like as best we can determine that? All right, so now we know where we are and where we're going to go and what it is most likely that we're going to need to have to compete at that point in time. Do we have everything? And if we don't, how do we fill this gap? That's a good manager. So identifying where you are, where you're going, do we have a gap? And how do we fill that gap, and how quickly can we fill that gap so that we can get there? That's a central area to all management. I've had a lot of people say to me, a lot of senior leaders at universities too, that they're strategic. And I'll ask them, why do you say you're strategic? Tell me why you say that. Well, I because I think think strategic. And I'll go, well, I understand that, but can you tell me, why do you think that you think strategic? What makes you say that? Are you able to identify the current situation that you have? Are you able to assess all of the essential elements now? And where is it that you're going, and how far out are you planning to go? Well, there's the big question, because they really don't know. They just know that they want to go somewhere in the future. They don't know where they want to go, or when they want to go, or how they're going to get there, or what it is really that they want to get. They have some general broad-based hope of where they're going to go in the future. Well, that's not a goal, and that's certainly not objectives. So we got a problem here, is that you don't really know where you're going. You don't even have a time frame of where you're going in the future, and you don't know what you're going to need in the future. And so you don't even have an idea of what you have now and what you need there, and you can't fill a gap because you don't even know what you have and what you need. So you're not strategic. You're really just a daydreamer is what you are. This is where you want to go. Yeah, that's not strategic at all. Now, it's unfortunate that when I say that, it's often, I say it to senior leadership. They don't always take it well. But I've got to that point in my career where, might as well let them know anyway, right? Second thing, organizing, making sure that those different functional areas of that firm are organized to the point where they have optimal coordination. When we need a product, or when we need input from this functional area, it's going to be given to us when we need that. That's important. We don't need it earlier. We don't need it later. We need it when we need it. So having optimal coordination of that. Let me give you an example of that. Disney has movie studios. They have Marvel Studios, they have Lucasfilms, they have Disney Pictures, they have different movie studios, right? We're all in agreement there, right? And we know that at any given time in that movie studio, whichever one you want to pick, they have different movie projects that are at different stages of development. You guys agree with me there? Is that a fair statement? Okay, good. So let's say we have 3 different movie projects. One is ready for release on Thanksgiving weekend. One is in production midway through. And the third one is in the conceptual development stage. Now, when we're talking about managers and how to control these different divisions and departments for optimal coordination, we're looking at those resources that would be necessary for each one of those films when they need those resources. So that one that's going to be developed in, one that's going to be released in Thanksgiving, most likely we're going to need input from marketing and sales on that as support. And of course, we're going to have finance in there as well, because finance is always going to be in there. But when it comes to research and development and maybe production, we don't need it because we're already finished with that. Now, the second one, we don't need marketing and sales yet, but we need production. We need development. We need maybe a little bit of R&D in there. And the third one, we don't need marketing and sales in that. We need finance in there because we have to have that. We certainly need R&D in there, or we need research that's going to be in there. So that kind of gives us a background on what it is that we're doing. So the point being is this: a good manager knows when to best coordinate those functional activities to support whatever that project might be, or whatever that strategy might be. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at organizational structures, the best way of doing that. Directing. Here's our third area that managers should know how to do. This is that motivation and communication for those employees, looking at maybe an alignment of the firm's goals and the alignment of that individual's goals. If we can do that, if we can find out from that employee, what are your goals for yourself personally, maybe professionally, what are your goals? And if we can align those goals with the goals of the organization, now we're going together. We're working together for a common output or a common goal for them. And that would be a good sign of a director, a management, looking at how to do that, how to influence and oversee the behavior. And then finally, controlling, looking at and evaluating the performance standards. And what is it that we expect that strategy to be doing? And are we doing it? And if we're not doing it, how do we pull the levers that are necessary to get it either back on track or to continue it as it's going? All right. So when we're looking now, let's see, where are we here? Marketing. Analyzing the marketing department. Do they know what they're doing? This, of course, is the process of defining and anticipating and creating and fulfilling those customers' needs and wants through research and packaging and presenting that product and the services to the customers. That involves being aware of all the tools necessary to do a good customer analysis, looking at how to best sell that product and provide those services and plan for those product and services in the future with maybe promotional areas. How are we pricing our product? Does that consumer feel that what they're getting from us is a value? Are we able to make sure that we have a good distribution network to get that product out to them? And do we know how to do the appropriate market research to get the valued information necessary to make the best decisions going forward? Whoops, back. Ansoff came up with a neat little matrix. It's called Ansoff Product Market Growth Matrix. It aligns with marketing. That's why I kind of threw it in here. It is a 2x2 matrix that's based on two things: the market and looking at the product, how to grow. 4 possible strategies: market penetration, market development, product development, and diversification. All of them are growth strategies, going from the least risky to the most risky. But again, they're all growth strategies and they're based on just 2 variables: the market that we're in and the products that we have. So here's the first one. It's called market penetration. You guys see this every day. I guarantee you, when you go to Albertsons or Vons or Stater Brothers or Whole Foods or wherever you might shop, you're going to see this every day. It doesn't have to be a grocery store. It could be Target, could be Walmart. Market penetration is the first strategy. It's a growth strategy. All we're doing is this: we're taking the current products that you are already buying, and we want you to buy more of them. So it's a growth strategy that is focused on gaining more market share through marketing those existing products into that current market segment. So you're already buying this product. We just want you to buy more of that product. Can anybody give me an example of that type of marketing strategy? You're already buying the product. We just want you to buy more of it. It is a growth strategy.
When they put something on sale?
There you go. So you get something, you'll see it. Coca-Cola does this. You buy 1 12-pack of Coca-Cola for one price, but if you buy 3 of them, it's at a lower price. Have you guys seen that? Right? So you're already the existing customer, and it's already the existing product, and what they want you to do is buy more of that existing product.
Yeah, I just bought 4 boxes of Eggo waffles because if you had to buy 4 to get them for $2.49.
Right. That is this strategy.
What about, Professor, like when you buy something at Macy's and you get so many credits, and so you're like, hey, you know what? if I just go ahead and spend another $10, I'm gonna get another 5 credits. I'm gonna get $50 off of this. So it makes you want to buy more.
Yep, and that's the same strategy. That is the same strategy. Is it what they're,
Kohl's
Sure.
Kohl's does the most with that, with their Kohl's Cash and all
Yeah.
that BS.
yeah. So what they're trying to do is provide you with an incentive that will have you spend more or return faster to buy more of what you're already currently buying. And it can be done many, many ways, many different promotions to do that. But the end game is this. You have a current customer and you want them to buy more of that current product. That's what it is. And that's a growth strategy. Now, is this very risky as far as a growth strategy? Is it risky at all? Not. There's no risk in this at all. You're already buying what you're buying that product. You're just buying more of it, right? Here's our next one. This is market development. So we have a current product, and now we want to take that current product and we want to move that current product into a new market. So growth now is going to be focused on marketing an existing product into a new market segment. Doesn't have to be a geographic area. It could be a new buying group. So you might be selling right now to, the Gen Z population, and you want to take that product and you want to move it into another buying group or another group of buyers. So that's market development strategy. Now, this one here then takes a little bit of research by our marketing department. So remember, we were talking about how important marketing is. So what does marketing have to do in order to make this particular strategy effective? What do they have to do?
They have to do a survey of the new market or the new people that is gonna buy it.
Yeah, they have to get the information necessary. Will this new market group, this new buying group, will they be interested in this product as it is? Or maybe we need to make a few changes to them to make it more appealing for this new buying group. Make some, minor ancillary type changes to that thing. But they're the ones that are going to have to give that or provide that determination to our expansion group here, our decision makers on whether or not we should ever actually enter into this new market. Is there some sort of reasonable assurance that by doing this, we're going to create some sales? So there is an importance then based on the value of what marketing provides us, that kind of data. If they come back and say, yeah, this is going to work, well, then we go forward with it. That's our second strategy. Now, this one's a little bit more risky, isn't it? It is. All right, here's our third one. This is product development. Now what we do is we have a brand new product, and we're going to take that new product and we're going to provide it to our current market. So growth is going to be focused on a new product development to existing customers this could be done through incremental improvements, or it could be through a brand new product development, just continuous development. Now, let me kind of explain this one here for you. So we got a current market, those who are buying our products right now. And what we want to do is introduce a new product to that buying group. This is done all the time also. In fact, I can give you examples of Red Bull when it came out with the silver and blue can. That was the original can. How many different flavors of Red Bull do you see now? That's a new product going into that same market. So that's an example of product development. How about Coca-Cola and the numbers of different products that Coca-Cola offers right now? You have Coca-Cola Cherry, you have Coca-Cola Vanilla, you have Coca-Cola Original, you have Diet Coke, you have Zero Coke, you have tiny little Cokes, you have, how many different ones of Coke do they have? So those are new products going into
Cherry Coke, Vanilla Coke.
Exactly. And not only that, now you're looking at new products into a current market, but Coke also sells don't they do like energy drinks and water drinks and stuff too, right? All right. So a little bit more of a risk on this one here. And again, you can see the importance then of our marketing group. They've got to make sure that if we're going to be introducing a new product, it's going to be accepted by our current market out there. Last one, diversification. We got a brand new product going into a brand new market. So growth here is going to be achieved by developing a brand new market to sell into new markets through a diversification strategy. Now, depending on how different that new product is and how new that new market is, we might have some different kind of diversification strategies to follow. Let's take a look at those 4 different strategies here. And as I said, it's a 2x2 matrix. And you can see that there's yellow arrows here. And they're talking about existing products to new products and existing markets to new markets. And as we move to the right and down, we have increasing risk. So going from existing products and existing markets to new products in existing markets, there's an increased risk. Going from existing products to brand new, or excuse me, existing markets to new markets and existing products to new products, there's an increasing risk there. And you can see that the bottom right cell, the diversification cell, is the one that has the most risk both directions. Little note there, it says the more you know about your markets, the more likely you will be to succeed. This has to do with what we've been talking about all along. The more and more you know about your competition, the more and more you know about your market, the more you know about your products and the competitors' products, the better your strategy is going to be. All right, that's ANSOP, product market matrix. Here's an example. This is real life now. So this is Apple. All right. So you have here then, you have existing products and existing market. So that would be market, or existing products, existing market, up there, top left, market penetration, increasing the market share within the country. That's low risk. All right. Now we're going to go over then to new products in existing market. That would be product development. Apple then developed the AirPods to add to their existing products. So that would be a product development, medium risk on that one. Going to market development, now we're looking at a new market, existing products. So now we're expanding that market to a new country in Africa, medium risk there. And going over to new product and new market, launching new iPhone SE for new countries. And that would be a diversification strategy, which would be considered high risk. So you can see then with Apple and with ANSOP product market matrix, there's examples of each one of those quadrants for those Apple products. So they're following all 4 of them. All right. Let's take a look then at operations, production and operations. Whoops. So areas that we would be concerned about here would be, are we using the correct process type? There are different types of processes for manufacturing based on what it is that is running through our machines. There is one called continuous. So if we were making a product like a beverage, like Coca-Cola, or the Miller factory that is over off the 210 freeway in Irwindale making Miller beer, light beer, I believe it is. That uses a continual process. You have product, raw material going in, and as it's being processed, it goes out and it becomes bottled or canned and shipped out, a continuous process. That's one type of production process. But if you're making something that is unique, that is maybe a job shop process, maybe you're making customized motorcycles, well, you can't use a continuous operation. It doesn't work. So you have to use an operation that accounts for the customization of that particular product as it goes through the process of being manufactured. So identifying the right process type is important to make sure that the firm is being efficient and effective. Then we look at capacity. Do we have enough capacity? Do we have too little capacity? Inventory. How much inventory do we have? And how much inventory should we have? Well, we know inventory is expensive. Inventory does all sorts of things. It becomes damaged. Inventory walks away from us, especially during the holiday season. You have in inventory 50, 75-inch flat screen TVs, and next time you do the inventory, you have 45 of those flat screen TVs, and 5 of them somehow grew legs and walked out of the building. That's inventory shrinkage. Workforce. Considerations about workforce, especially if it's seasonality. If your product that you're making is seasonal, like jet skis or snowmobiles, seasonal. Does your workforce stay with you all year long? Or do you let them go after the end of the season and then try and rehire them, hoping that you get the qualified workers back? Or are there ways that you can do your manufacturing where it's counter-cyclical, where you can have snowmobiles manufactured at one part of the year and then jet skis manufactured at the other part? That way you have continuous manufacturing and you can keep your workforce. And quality. Do you have too much quality? Do you have too little quality? We know quality is important, but we also know quality is expensive. Now, there's been argument that says quality does not have an expense to it because you reap the benefit of the sales, but quality does cost when it comes to manufacturing. You can put too much quality into a product, and that product may not sell for the amount that you're hoping for because of the fact of that marketplace. It just doesn't substantiate that kind of pricing. R&D, critical for the firm's development. Having good strategic operational partnerships with other vital business functions. Internally, one of the elements that R&D has to take a look at is improving our internal processes. That's that transformation of inputs to outputs. Can they do things? Can they see things that can help us improve our processes through R&D? And externally, of course, we have to have an awareness of how our products are situated in the market and make those improvements that those consumers are expecting. That could be through incremental improvements or brand new product development. MIS, the information systems. Well, let me ask you this question. How many passwords do you guys have personally? How many
Not
Too
as
ma-
many as I should.
Too many.
Too many.
Too many.
And that is the common response that I hear from everyone, is that everyone has too many passwords. And of course, we all try and do the same thing. We all try to make a password that is the same, that can be used on multiple platforms, right? So that we don't have to remember it all the time. And the problem is that they change every 3 months or every however often. They change, don't they? And then what you try and do is, okay, I'm going to change this password by changing a couple letters and maybe changing a number here and putting, right? So we always try and adapt to that. And then you forget it. How about the password you have for Spectrum and the password you have for Apple and the password you have for, I'm just thinking on my TV here, I got a password for Amazon. I have a password for Peacock. I have a password for Hulu. They're all different. And then you have a password for your computer. And if you have a work computer, they got to change that all the time, right? And it has to be of a certain format for it to be an acceptable password. Well, it is important to have your information secure. I'm not saying that it's not, but there are elements of information systems that are just not, that are cumbersome. So for a company, one of the areas that we look at then is the information that is being stored there, is it safe? But on the other hand, can those departments within that organization, can they access that information when they need to help them make more informed or better informed decisions. And then again, from those departments that are accessing this information, can they then easily put that new information back in the system and store it securely? Excuse me. And is our system large enough for growth? If we go out and do a growth strategy, and part of that growth strategy might be an acquisition or a merger. And now what we want to do is take that information from that acquired company or that merged company and have it reside on our servers, our information system. Is it capable of storing all that information? And if not, then what do? We have to make adaptations. We have to expand that. Now that then would be called systemic resistant. The system itself is blocking a successful growth strategy by the system not being able to adapt or adopt to all of that brand new information that is coming in that we need. So there would be a systems resistance there, systemic resistance. All right, we are going to look at now, whoops, let me go back up here. We're going to be looking at the IFE. This is that internal factors evaluation matrix. Now this comes from, again, the SWOT analysis. And what we're pulling over here is all the strengths and all the weaknesses. They come over here. All right, we're going to be listing our strengths and our weaknesses. And again, similar to the EFE, we're going to be rating those strengths and weaknesses based on their importance to each other. So we're going to list over those strengths and weaknesses, and we're going to give them a weighting of importance relative to each other. Total weighting of all of these factors is going to be a 1.0. Now, our rating system is, again, the same, or the numbers are the same as what we used with our external factors evaluation, 1 through 4. But this one's different. The strengths will only receive a 3 or a 4. It's either a minor strength, which is a 3, or a major strength, which is a 4. The weaknesses will only receive a 1 or a 2. 1 is a major weakness, 2 is a minor weakness. And then we take the weight times the rating and we get a weighted score. And then that weighted score, that final summed weighted score, is the number that we need, along with the number that came off our EFE, to be plotted into the next matrix, which is the IE matrix, giving us our first recommended strategy. So here's an example of an internal factors evaluation. So you can see that we've got on the top there are strengths, bottom there are weaknesses, all of the weights together, total of 1.0. And you notice that all the strengths are 3s and 4s and all the weaknesses are 1s and 2s, either a major or a minor. Take the weight times the rating, you get a weighted score, you sum the weighted score, and in this particular case, we have a 2.78. Now, I don't remember what our EFE score, I think it was a 3.16, I believe. All right. So now what we do is we take then and we plot it. And this is our IE matrix, internal external matrix. So we have here our EFE score, a 3.16, and our IFE score, which was a 2.78. Okay. And we are found in zone 2. This is a 3x3 matrix, and you can see the IFE scores are on the top going horizontally. From the right-hand side, it's a 1 going over to the left, a 4, and the EFE score is going vertically from a 1 to a 4. We're in zone 2. And if we're found in zone 1, 2, or 4, we can follow an aggressive strategy, a grow and build strategy. If we're found in 3, 5, and 7, it's a hold and maintain strategy. Now, it doesn't mean that we're just going to not do anything. It's telling us that based on this first assessment of the firm, we don't have enough information to make a determination on whether or not to follow a growth strategy or whether or not to follow a divest or harvest strategy. So we're going to kind of hold off until we get more information. And there are going to be other matrices that will either determine us to go into a grow or build or go into a harvest or divest strategy. So 3, 5, and 7 is the hold and maintain strategy. And then firms that fall into the 6, 8, and 9, clearly you have a weak internal analysis and you have a weak external factors evaluation as well. And the strategy for those firms would be harvest or divest. All right. Anybody have any questions on the IFE and the IE matrix? Pretty straightforward. All right, here we go. Now, this then would be the strategic factors analysis summary. This one here provides those decision makers with the most important factors that are found in the EFE and the IFE. Here's the problem. If they're the most important factors, they're the ones that have the highest weighted value. And we need 12 of these factors. We need 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, 3 opportunities, and 3 threats. So we're going to be pulling over 12 factors, the most important value with all of them. But we can't go over 1.0. So we're going to have to take these factors over their original weight and somehow reduce those original weighted factors down to a 1.0. But we need to maintain that proportionality that was originally set from the EFE and IFE. That's important. They were given a number for a reason. And that number was based on their importance relative to the other factors. We just can't simply pull off some number here to make it a 1.0 because now we've lost that relationship. So we have to equally drop each one of those factors down to maintain that relationship, that proportionality. There's the difficulty. So how do we go about doing that? All right. So I did say there's 12 factors, and most likely you're going to be over that 1.0. All right, here's how we go about this. Column 1, these would be the factors that you're bringing over from your EFE and your IFE. Most important factors. And again, the most important factors are the ones that have the highest weighted value. We need 3 strengths, 3 weaknesses, 3 opportunities, 3 threats. Column 2 is the original weight that was given to each one of those factors from the EFE and IFE. Column 2A is going to be our adjusted weight. We're going to drop the weight of each one of these factors down so that it then totals 1.0. And we're going to adjust each one of those factors onto column 2A. Column 3. Now what we're looking at is the rating, how well the company's management is responding to these strategic factors. These factors then, column 3, are the same ratings that you gave them under the EFE and the IFE. So if you gave a strength of 4, it's a 4 here. If you gave a weakness a 2, it's a 2 here. Those numbers come right over. So column 1, column 2, and column 3, all of that factors, all that information is the same. We look at the weighted score. Now what we're going to be doing is looking at the weighted score. We're going to take column 2A times column 3. And then we add 2 more columns to this. We're adding a column called duration, having to do with each of those factors. What's the lifespan on each one of those factors? So we have a strength that we've identified that we currently have. So that would be, currently would be a short term. But if it's a strength that can last some period of time, we can also give it an intermediate term. And we might be able to give it a long term. Now, another example would be an opportunity. Maybe that opportunity only lasts for a short term, less than 1 year. And in our comment section tells us about that duration with that particular factor. Opportunity that we see right now might close in 1 year. That would be the kind of a comment you would have. Here's what it looks like. Kind of busy. Now, in this particular case, I've only listed 9 factors because of the size of this here. And it was a challenge to get it all on there. So we only have 9 here. But the point being is that with these 9, you can see that we're already over. We have a 1.10 and we need to reduce it to a 1.0. Right? So anybody give a thought on how do we go about taking those original weights and getting them down? So we took that, you can see on the first one there, 0.15, it's been reduced to a 0.138. The second one, the same, 138. The third one, a 0.10, it's gone down to a 0.088. So we must have done something to reduce these down, and the total now for all of those factors is a 1.0, but you notice that there's proportionality and it still exists. So none of those factors were dropped by 0.11 to make it a 0.10. They've all been reduced proportionally to give the same values that originally those numbers had. Anybody have a thought on how we go about doing this? All right. Well, let me help you here. So here's how we do this. We know we have to reduce it down to a 1.00, right, Rosa? Right. So we're going to take 1.00 and we're going to divide that by that number that we find in column 2, which would be a 1.11. So if you guys have a calculator, and if you take a 1.00 and divide that by 1.11, you're going to come up with a factor number or a percentage. Can someone tell me what that is?
0.9009009.
.090, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay, now take 0.15 times that 0.090. What do you have?
What are we multiplying it by? The
You're gonna-
0.15?
You're going to take 0.15 times 0.90.
Yeah, comes out to be 0.0135.
Okay, so in this particular case, we have 0.138. So I probably used a few more numbers on coming out rather than just 0.9.
Right.
Probably went out a little bit farther on that with decimals. But the point being is this, you can see then by using that factored number, that percentage on each one of those original weights, now we're able to reduce those original weights down to 1.0, and we've still maintained the relationship with each one of those factors. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions on how we do that? Did it make sense to anybody, or does it make sense to anybody?
Not to me,
Who said not to me?
Angela. I'm gonna be
Angela.
honest. It
Okay,
doesn't make
Angela.
sense to me at all.
Angela, let me give you an example, okay? All right, you got your calculator, Angela?
I do.
All right, so let's say this. Let's say that out of the original weights, we come up with a 1.25. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Now, we know we need to go to a 1.0. So let's take our 1.0 and divide 1.0 by 1.25.
Okay.
Tell me what number you get.
1.0 divided by
1.25.
1.25.
You're going to get a percentage.
0.8.
0.8.
0.8. Yeah.
That's your percentage. Now you take that 0.8 times each one of those original valued weights that you would find in column 2. And then that gives you your new adjusted weight. And then when you sum that adjusted weight table, you're going to come up with a 1.0.
Okay.
Did that make sense, Angela?
It does. I know
It's
what was
confusing.
down at the total score.
Yeah,
I think I just missed the components down at the total score, where you were dividing from.
right. Yeah, so what we're looking for here then is a percentage. So if we have a higher original weighted value, we're trying to get a percentage that we need to use to adjust each of those values down. That's really what we're looking at. And on this one here, you can see in column 5, we have duration, column 6, comments. Column 5 then is talking about each one of those factors, those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and how long they're going to be around. So we can see that opportunity 1 is going to be at least an intermediate length. And the comment there is increase in antivirus protection will reduce this opportunity at some point in time, right? So it's not going to exist a long time. And then opportunity 3, large population, Gen X and Y, extremely individualistic. And again, we have a short and intermediate length on that duration. And the comment there is strong buying group must be maintained. So now going down to strength 1, you notice that we got 3 little check marks going all the way across. That is a core competency of this company. iTunes Store is a good source of revenue for both iPods and iPads. Actually, it's not a competence. It's the excellent brand loyalty, the next one. In this one here, though, the opportunity, or excuse me, the duration is short, medium, and long. And the comment that we have here is strong complementaries must be maintained. So in other words, this particular strength, we need to continue to maintain that as a complementary product for our main product. And then on strength 7, we have all the way across short, intermediate, and long. There's the core competence that I was talking about previously. All right, that then is the strategic factors analysis summary. And you guys are done for the night, where you get to go and prepare for turkey. Has anyone bought